It can be lonely at the top. We all know what it's like to lead and own a business and wanting to scale, but finding yourself at a glass ceiling. That is where the power of collaboration and connection comes in. Hi, I'm Natasha Milani. I'm an expert at helping businesses and business owners harness the power of collaboration to connect, scale and grow. I am passionate about collaboration. I believe that no one executes alone. We all do better when we do it together. Welcome to this Power of Collaboration podcast. It's wonderful to have you here. I hope you have the inspiration and information you need to harness the power of collaboration to break through your glass ceiling. I'm really excited today. We're talking to Kelly Jamieson of Edible Blooms. Welcome to you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Natasha.
I'm excited to have you here for a couple of reasons. It's great to see a female business owner and entrepreneur do well. But more importantly, I'm excited to have a conversation about your business. I've been a customer of Edible Blooms and I've given you feedback before. I think it's one of the best e-commerce platforms I've ever utilised from a customer experience. So kudos to you for that, and we might talk about that a bit more. Kelly, before we dive into all of this meaty conversation, let's just get some background from you. Where do you hail from? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. So I'm very proudly a South Australian girl. So I grew up on a farm in South Australia. So my parents were farmers. I had a father who was a farmer and a mother who was a school teacher. So business was pretty foreign to me when I was finishing school. I was lucky enough to board for my secondary school in Adelaide, which was a great experience. And I guess that was probably my first experience with just having a really close group of friends, and they're still great friends of mine today. And we've all done really different things. But when I finished school, I kind of intended to go to university like everyone does when they finish school. And I was actually offered a job when I finished school and offered to sponsor my study. So I actually never went to university full time, which is kind of a different route to a lot of other young people finishing school, and perhaps maybe more common now. You see a lot more of those graduate programs and taking school leavers and having workplace experience and studying part-time. But when I did that in 1995, it wasn't overly common. So I started my marketing degree and spent 6 years to get my degree rather than the normal 3, and took a couple of years break and then went straight into my MBA studies at Uni of Adelaide. So by the time I got to my late 20s, I'd had lots of work experience and study experience. So it was kind of like a different path to get there. And in that time, I'd worked in the UK. I worked for magazines in the UK in marketing roles, and I came back home to Adelaide, and I actually ended up in professional services, which was a really interesting space to work in from a marketing perspective, especially after coming from publishing. And then I decided to start my own business. So I was in my late 20s and decided that I'd start researching what that might look like. And it was always probably a goal of mine. I'm a Virgo, for anyone that follows star signs. Incredibly organised. I'm a great planner, like to have a 10-year roadmap out in front of me. And so it was always on that roadmap that I'd start my own business. And so when I was 26, I went to a consulting role for the professional services firm that I was working for, and I'd moved to Brisbane. So I was actually working for the National Network. It was the largest legal firm in the country at the time. And I went to 4 days a week, and I used the 1 day a week that I had by freeing up some time to research what was next. And so at that time I looked at buying a franchise business, because that was the days of Boost Juice just starting, and that was all the rage, if everyone remembers back then. So I looked at that kind of opportunity. I looked at buying an existing business. In fact, I even went through the offer process on buying a business and missed out. And I'm really grateful I did miss out on that opportunity. I think sometimes things work out for a reason. I even had a book idea at the time. The book idea I had was, I think as a female in business, we put a lot of people up on pedestals and we think that there's no way we could achieve what they're doing. So I wanted to interview really successful women globally, but find out what the chink in their armour was, what made them not perfect. Because I think that's a fault of females, in that we put people on these pedestals and think there's no way I can do what they're doing. But if you can make that person more relatable, I think it inspires others to get to that place. And eventually I landed on this crazy idea of combining two of my loves, which was sending flowers and great food, into this concept of edible blooms. And so literally from the time I had the first idea of edible blooms and started making fruit bouquets and taking them to dinner parties when I was living in Brisbane to get people's feedback on what I should charge for it and if it was a viable product. Within 3 months, I'd opened the doors to Edible Blooms. So that was back in 2005. So we've just turned 16. So 16 years later, here I am still doing Edible Blooms, the longest job I've ever held. And we've got 7 locations, 130 staff, and we operate out of 3 countries. So it's been quite a journey, and it hasn't been a smooth ride that whole 16 years, but it's been the ride of my life so far. It's been really exciting, and I've met great people and learnt so much, and I'm still learning today.
Well, that is just one hell of a story, and there's so much to talk about. I'm worried we might be here for 3 hours.
I'll try and keep the next answers shorter. Sorry, Natasha.
No. Please. I love hearing the story. And I think your book idea, hold that one. I think there's still a place for that. I love your comment about Virgos. I actually do know a lot of successful Virgo business people.
Really?
I hadn't really thought about that, but for those interested, you might want to delve into that story further.
If you want to have children that are business people, plan accordingly.
There's a tip for you right there. Now 16 years, you talk about the tremendous growth. I read that your first financial year, you reached $1 million turnover. Obviously, there's been an evolution since then. Can you just share with us some of that evolution? Because I'm sure what you did back then is possibly very different to what you do now.
Actually, it's really interesting. Probably the first evolution in the Edible Blooms journey was it was at the very start of .com and the boom of online sales, and it was very early back in 2005 in Australia. But when I was in the UK, I was working for a publishing company and we were rolling out the content online. It was Time Out magazine, and so I was part of that whole .com boom back in 2000 in the UK. So I'd had a bit of a taste of e-commerce, and I'd seen it done well and done badly, because that was a really big boom time, but there was some survivors of that early .com boom, and there were some big crash landings. So when I had the idea of Edible Blooms, and flowers and books were 2 of the early categories that people felt comfortable ordering because they were sending things in places that they weren't. And so I wasn't sure whether Edible Blooms was going to be like a franchise type business model or whether it would be an e-commerce platform. So I had a really small budget because I actually was using the money I'd saved for my first house and betting it on a new business idea. So it was all bootstrapped, self-funded. There wasn't investors. Now that landscape's changed, because now people have ideas and they get investment from the get-go, or they get an MVP up and then they get investment at an early stage. That just wasn't a thing back then. So it was sort of fund it and see how you go. And the banks didn't want to talk to me. I did try that early on, and they were like, you need 3 years trading history and all of these things. So you really just had to bootstrap it and be really careful on your spending to get things moving. And we had our first franchise inquiry from Tasmania 6 weeks after we opened the doors. So I had a website from the very beginning, which we built very cost effectively. I had Russian developers. Literally had a Russian developer called Sergei Smirnov, and I was up in the middle of the night
quite
talking.
Appropriate name,
it is
it?
a very appropriate name. And it was in that very early pioneering stage of e-commerce where you were building basic sites. So the functionality, I look back and I think, oh my gosh, why do people buy on that platform? The photography had been done in my lounge room with no lighting. It was very, very basic, but we had a really interesting concept. I think we put a lot of life around it. We did a lot of PR in that early stage because that was how we got to market. And look, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride in that, especially that first sort of 18 months. I literally had a theory at one point because I'd never worked in retail before I started the business, and I thought that customers were ruled by lunar cycles. I could not work out why some days I'd get 20 orders and the next day I'd get 2. Like, it was a real roller coaster in that early stage. And in the first 12 months we opened from Brisbane, we opened our own stores in Adelaide, Sydney and Melbourne, and my sister joined me in the business soon after I started, and we still work together really well today. I love working with my sister, so we're still the 2 owners of Edible Blooms, and I've been married in that time, and my husband's now part of the business, which I love. So it's a really, honestly, I don't know where you want to start on, but there's lots of different things that I've learnt along the way. But the big early on learning was we just saw online sales. We just saw more and more people ordering on the website rather than phone. And so we backed ourselves and said this is going to be an e-commerce platform, and we modelled the business accordingly. And I'm really grateful we did, because I think that had we have gone down that traditional franchise model, which was more popular at the time, I think we would have added a great deal of complexity to the business, and I think we may have got faster growth in the early stages, but I think it would have really flatlined and struggled.
So as the listeners can see, there's a huge amount of depth that we can talk about here. I'd like to pick up your point around, and I hope this encourages many, that when you took that early risk, you went with a bit of gut instinct, you put the mortgage on the line, and I think that is the true sign of a great entrepreneur. You backed yourself. You determined that franchising wasn't the model, and there was an e-commerce growth, and that was probably, bode you well in the long term. Because we do think of starting a business differently these days. Seems to be more complexity to it a little bit.
I agree. There were some things back then that were harder, like now if you're starting a website, there's all these apps that you can integrate that can do all this, that can get great functionality really quickly if you're in the e-commerce space. But there's so much more competition, and the cost of going digital is so much greater. So back then it was new, so I could buy clicks on Google for a few cents. Now you're looking at a few dollars for every click. So you really can't test and burn too quickly. And the other thing I'm really observing currently in e-commerce is the power of the brand. So it's really important to build a brand. So I'm really proud now that Edible Blooms, we have the most brand searches of any brand in the gifting market in Australia. And that's really important to us, and we nurture that and value that highly, because that means that people know us, they trust us, and we're not having to pay Google for every one of those clicks, because if we were, it'd be much harder to make a sustainable business long term. So building a brand is really important today, and I think that as we continue to grow, there'll be a lot more value on the importance of brand.
There's a good tip right there, and it's very evident when you do search for corporate gifts or your industry sector that you're definitely the forefront of any search that I've ever done.
We try. Thank you. I'll tell the team. They'll be very happy to hear that.
Well, that's good feedback. We always like that. And I just want to quickly touch on two things. You're still a family business, and there's complexity with family businesses. Mm-hmm. And you've never done any sort of capital raise, equity, shareholding, which is, I think kudos to the organic growth that you've managed to achieve.
Well, it hasn't always been easy. I think there's been plenty of times where I've thought, oh gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a financial partner? It would make that next step of growth a lot easier. And we've certainly looked at it and been approached a number of times over the last 16 years, but there's a great simplicity in what we do now, because we get to make decisions very quickly, and I think agility is really important, and it's a word that's used a lot at the moment, but the ability to follow that instinct and make a decision but not have to go through a board process or a big approval process, because your greatest competitor is probably going to be a much smaller business than yours. So if you can't move quickly in today's business environment, I think that's a real challenge. So the simplicity of our business structure by remaining bootstrapped, I think that's a big advantage for us at the moment. So we're keen to hang on to that for as long as we can.
I interviewed Anthony Kittle of Red Arc recently. We were talking about that podcast just before we started recording, and he talked about the R&D spend in his business. I'm just curious to know, in an e-commerce based business, there's a lot changing at the moment. Social media, there's the Amazons that are making their way in, machine learning, AI. Can you just share what that landscape looks like, and how do you continually invest and be on top of all of that?
Well, we look at our website as our front of house, so it's the key channel for us, for customers to find us and have an experience with us. And I love that you like our current website, because it's terrible as a business owner. All you see are the things that are wrong with it, because you're always self-critical about what you need to do better. So it's really refreshing when you chat to a customer and they've had a great experience. And we get a lot of that, but we're in the process of actually re-platforming. So we're rebuilding our entire IT framework at the moment, which is a big investment. And when you're a business owner, that's money that you're having to just balance and making sure that everything's moving in and out as it needs to be. But I'm really excited. So we're putting in some really great new user experience features. It's going live in January and we're rolling it out globally. So it'll roll out in New Zealand, Australia and the UK. It is, for us, probably our biggest investment piece is always around technology and our systems and also our people. So because we make our products fresh every day, and that's why we've ended up with this store network with one in every capital city, because we work with fresh fruit, now work with cheese, we work with fresh donuts. There's all these delicious things, but they have to be delivered fresh. So our people are a really important part of our business, and it's probably been one of the complex parts of the business that we've grown organically, in that we've always had team members in multiple locations, and I really envy anyone else that has a business and they have their whole team in one spot, because managing business cultures becomes so much more complex and more layers when you're working across multiple sites. So one day it would be a dream I could get everyone together in a room together. It'd be amazing, but the business has to keep operating. So that's just it's a dream of mine. So for us, it's systems and people that are the two priorities of our business.
Systems and people. That's a great insight there. I want to talk to you more about that production side now, because I think collaboration might come in here when you're talking about some logistics and those sort of partners. But just quickly, will your products ever be delivered by drones? Bit of a random question.
I would love to have them delivered by drones. I have been watching drone evolution closely because it would be incredible. I've seen obviously Amazon are really invested in that development piece as well. So it would be amazing, because just the control we would have over end-to-end delivery would be excellent. And imagine that experience of having it flown and landing on your doorstep. It'd be just amazing. So I hope that's the case. I mean, even driverless cars, and then a little beep and you go outside and get your parcel out of a car. There's so many different things that could happen from a logistics perspective. And Australia's a really interesting market to look at from a logistics perspective, because when we look at Australia versus any other country in the world, it's hot. We're really spread out. So our population is we've got to cover the most area, and it's geographically spread with people. So the cost of delivery and the complexities in Australia are much higher than most other countries for that reason. So, so drones would be amazing.
There certainly is. It certainly is a fascinating concept, and as you say, Amazon is trialling it, and there's a few suppliers that are emerging here locally in the marketplace.
If anyone's listening and they want to trial with us, I'm all ears.
Well, there you go. We'll put the word out. Amazon, what changes have they made to the marketplace that have helped, and maybe what's been challenging?
I honestly don't think Amazon helps brands. And if I'm being really honest, I don't think when you look at the history of Amazon, if something becomes too popular, they'll look at how they can actually own that channel. So it's a bit like our supermarkets, where we're seeing more and more home brands in supermarkets and less local brands. So I think Amazon's great because it's convenience and they've got logistics really well sorted. I've been watching them in Australia. We are not part of the Amazon network, and I don't want to be in Australia because, as I said earlier, brand's really important to us, and the part of brand that's really important to me is having a direct dialogue with my customers so that I actually can communicate new updates and give special offers and say thank you to customers and all of those things that make somebody a lifelong customer. If a customer is buying through Amazon, they're an Amazon customer, not a customer of Edible Blooms. So there's that two-step remove process. And I think it's something to be really aware of as a business owner, because it's a great way to get to market quickly and to get your products out if you've got a new product. But eventually, if you can stand alone and not have to rely on those distribution channels and go direct to your customer, that's the biggest win long term. So we're playing the long game. So if in Australia, we're not on Amazon. In the UK, we are. So we're a new entrant to the UK market. We need to educate our customers. So we are selling through Amazon. But it's so much harder because you just don't have control over that customer experience piece. And I have to say I don't love it. But it's a fascinating juggernaut. Globally, it's just incredible to watch a business like that and how it's grown from books to what it is today. But I guess I'm just watching carefully in Australia to see how it goes.
Fair enough, and that is an interesting contrast there. I guess you assess what the cost of acquiring a customer is, and I guess that's also changed over the years with the growth of the competitive marketplace online.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we're really interested in the data around customer lifetime value. So, over the course of 3 or 4 years, a customer's value to us is much higher than just one transaction. So, and I guess, you can look at, I think if you're really clever with using channels like Amazon, you can use them as an acquisition channel and then hopefully they'll come directly back to you next time. But the convenience of things like Amazon Prime and all of those things that give you free delivery, people love Amazon for that reason, and they've done a great job with their customer experience when you buy with Amazon. So it's just one of those things. I just think you miss out on that dialogue too, the feedback, direct feedback from customers that helps you improve your business. And I think that's something probably that we've done reasonably well without blowing our trumpet, but we listen to customers. So when we get feedback, we have a process on how we share that with our team. So the store that dispatches it sees the feedback from a customer, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. And we've managed NPS, Net Promoter Scoring, in each location. We've been doing that for about 8 years now, and we track trends and how our stores are going. So we have a score generally that sits around 80 for NPS, which is pretty high. So, and we nurture that and try to keep getting that higher and higher all the time.
I was going to ask you about NPS. What are the key metrics in addition to NPS that you're measuring relating to customers in the business?
NPS is our main score that we have from every store. So we measure, and every month a report goes out across the company how each location's performed and how we've performed overall as a business. And there's usually some dialogue around what the reasons for the scores were and congratulating stores that have done particularly well. They really love that feedback because they love to know how they're performing, which is great. And then we really step back and look at how we can improve that overall. So the other metrics to look at from customers, we're always really interested in how many people are ordering same day, how many people are ordering overnight, and how many people are ordering in advance. So we offer up to a 2 to 3 hour turnaround on products in capital cities, which is pretty quick. But we're seeing consumers want everything now. That's a big change we're seeing across consumers. I'm trying to think of other metrics that we use. I think, NPS is that's our one that we hold to most account.
You mentioned that sort of life cycle of a customer. What's the key metrics there? Retention?
That's a dollar value. So we look at, we do it on a value of a customer and a dollar perspective, but then we can easily break that down into how many average orders that is. So how many times people are coming back. And so customer lifetime value is a key metric for us. And I think that's really, from a customer perspective, NPS captures so much. It's actually a really good one, particularly if we also have a process with our NPS that if anyone gives us a score of 6 or below, we contact them. So they get a call from us. So we're really quite on the front foot, because the thing you have to remember when you're in e-commerce is if you don't loop out a customer, they'll go straight to social media. So years gone by, in 2005, if something went wrong with the delivery, if it was a really extreme case, they'd be like, I'll take you to the ombudsman or what is it called? There was an old system. Anyway, but now the big threat for any e-commerce brand today is really, I'll put a review on social media. Like it's such a big thing. So I think for all businesses, you've just got to open up your feedback channels and be ready to actually follow through as quickly as you can. It's really important.
For our listeners, just a quick turnaround of your delivery. In case any of you listening, if you forget someone's birthday, I don't know, I've never done this before, but Edible Blooms do deliver very quickly and they'll never know that you forgot. So just a little hot tip there.
Thanks, Natasha. That's awesome. Very true. And actually, it is one of those things we're seeing at the moment, just so many just because and thank yous. Like that's the big, it's really nice. People are becoming really thoughtful of each other. That's what I've seen as the outcome of COVID.
That is very nice to hear. You touched on earlier that you work with perishable products, so let's delve into this sort of production side, which is unique because that makes logistics, I'm guessing, a little bit more challenging. Yeah. And we might go to my favourite topic of collaboration. So your logistic partners, your suppliers, I'm guessing that's one key.
They are very key, yes.
Yeah. So share with us about what success look like with those type of partnerships?
So, all of our courier partners are definitely key stakeholders in our business. They're partners. We do look at it as a true collaboration. So we're fully integrated with all of their systems. So we get real-time tracking through to customers. We can send out SMSs when things have been delivered, all of those sorts of things. So technology is amazing once you have great partnerships in place. Probably one of my best stories, and John, the state manager from Australia Post and Star Trek, will remember this maybe not so fondly at the time, because my first dealings with him years ago was we didn't have a Perth office at the time, and so it was Valentine's Day and we were sending all of the products
Must
overnight.
be a busy day, that one.
It is a busy day.
I'm sure.
And so we were sending, with Star Trek Express, we were sending all of our overnight deliveries. We sent them out the day before Valentine's Day to arrive in Perth. And as happens on those days, the worst nightmare, the plane had a malfunction and it was grounded. And so we got a call on the morning of Valentine's Day to say that our whole cage of products going to Perth was still in Adelaide. And this is quite early in the morning on Valentine's Day. And we were just almost high-fiving ourselves because everything had gone really smoothly. And that's always when you don't want to high-five yourself. It's like Murphy's Law. Don't get excited until the day is completed. So I picked up the phone, and this is the great thing about having terrific partners. So they were so responsive. We managed to get it on a flight. It landed in Perth early afternoon on Valentine's Day. And we'd always encouraged our team members to visit the depots of all of our couriers. So our manager at the time, we'd been over for a Perth Good Food and Wine show for a marketing exercise, and she'd actually spent time and visited the depot. She knew the team in person. So when the Adelaide office called Perth to say Edible Blooms have got Valentine's on board, they prioritised the unpacking on that plane that landed. They prioritised all of our parcels getting unloaded, sorted, and then every person in that depot in WA took parcels home in their personal vehicle and delivered them on their drive home that day. So we weren't able to get them all out. So if it was a city, like by the time this was happening, it was really around 4:00 in the afternoon on Valentine's Day. Not my ideal scenario, but what we were able to do was get most of them out, and then we knew which ones hadn't gotten out, so we could ring customers and say, look, we're really sorry this has happened. Some people were really unreasonable about it. That's, understandable. They'd booked it and it was a technical problem. We were doing everything we could to fix it, but we actually managed through that collaboration to get most of it out, and it was such a great effort from the team over. They didn't have to do that, but they cared about us because they had a personal connection with us, which was amazing. I guess that's a good example of that collaboration really being so powerful.
And I guess that was a huge learning for your business.
We now have a Perth office, so that will not happen again.
It's almost like your equivalent of a product recall or something similar.
Absolutely. And, it was so stressful that day, I remember, but we were also blessed because the time difference of Perth, because they were 2.5 hours behind. When we were alerted to it, we had that little bit of extra time up our sleeves, so that was a big blessing.
And any other sort of stories of collaboration that you'd like to share, whether it's in the growth of your business or other partnerships like the one you've just described then?
Actually, a really good one is the re-platform we're doing with our e-commerce system at the moment, and that's a really big decision for us to make, to choose a new partner, because that platform is all of our dispatch, all of our customer experience, all of the user experience when they're purchasing from us, speed. There's so many different pieces that go into that puzzle. And so I've found that exercise, and that's a really recent one, how helpful people are. And I really believe in that whole paying it forward. So when I knocked on people's door to ask about their experience with different platforms, they were really great at sharing their experience, what worked, what didn't. It helped us make a really educated decision about the right solution for us moving forward. And even yesterday, I had the e-commerce manager of another Adelaide e-commerce business in our office. They've just moved to the platform we're moving to, and she sat down, opened up her laptop, said this worked, this didn't, just so that we can be better prepared for when we go live. And it's that whole sharing. I think people are really open to share what has worked and what hasn't, and we certainly try to do that ourselves when anyone knocks on our door. But that whole piece of collaboration and supporting each other has been really critical for us, and I'll be able to tell you in January how successful that's been. But I definitely think we're in a much better place because we have reached out and asked others what their experience was.
And with those technology partnerships you've talked about, and you've talked about even with the logistic partners, where's the risk in terms of the IP as you're building these new systems? Can you just share a little bit? I guess this is, I don't want to say that it's a huge risk, but I'm sure it's something that you've considered.
It is, because with any kind of system, you can choose to go off the shelf and buy something that's already existed, which you don't own the IP of, or you can do a full custom build. And it's interesting because I was having this conversation with a new startup earlier this week, and they were wanting to go to a custom build at the beginning. And my personal position is I think that's a great way to spend a lot of money up front that you don't need to spend. You're much better spending the money on customers and engaging customers from the word go. So for any startup, I would really go down. There's so many great off-the-shelf platforms that you can use where you can get 80% of what you want there, faster, cheaper, and leave the money for customer-related things. So we've actually always used off-the-shelf web solutions and then customise key components around it. So we are going to another off-the-shelf system, and for me that's a risk decision because when you do a full custom build, if that developer that's done most of that grunt work, if they get hit by a bus, God forbid, no one else knows how to do that. It's really held, that knowledge is held by one or a small group of people. And what I'm seeing more and more is that people are seeing the agility of moving to a platform that's continually getting updated, continually getting new features on it. And there's some great platforms to look at. There's the Shopifys of the world. There's BigCommerce. There's Woo. There's so many. There's Wix. There's so many different platforms you can use, and it's just a much faster way to go to market. So we're building then. Moving to BigCommerce, and we're building some custom features that'll be a little bit of our IP around that. So that's the way I've approached it. I don't see the platform we're using as the true IP in our business. It's the vehicle to get us to our customers.
I think that's an excellent insight. Already I've extracted an idea from your business that, you talked about. It's about systems, it's about your people. There's the culture, and you gave a great example of what happened in Perth earlier. That is your true IP, your secret sauce.
Yeah.
To talk about, if you could just share a little insight into how do you build a culture of that sort of dedication, passion, commitment of people in your business? What do you do to build that culture?
Great question. And honestly, we're continually learning and improving all the time. When I first implemented values in our business, which was soon after we started, so we were very values-based from the very beginning, we had 11. And I soon learnt that I couldn't even remember all 11. So we reduced it down to 5, and we now have 3. So it's really important to actually make it simple. So I think the key to a great culture is making their core values just really simple so that you can remember and retain them at any time. When anyone starts with us, they get a notebook. It has our values on it, and it has a letter from us about why our values are really important to us and what they mean to us as a business. And we've developed that into behaviours of what a good behaviour is and what a bad behaviour is. So I think equally in any business culture, you've got to be equally defined about what is a great culture and what's not, and what that means for you. Because if you don't have the boundaries of what isn't okay, it's really hard to performance manage team members as well if they're not doing the right thing and they're not fitting with company culture. So, and we've seen in the 16 years of business how impactful one bad egg can be in a business. And, you can have the best culture and you can have someone, and if you don't act on it and make quick decisions, how quickly it can unwind. And we see that because we have lots of different locations, and that's one of our challenges, is because we're not physically there every day, we're trying to work out some better indicators of how we can get more early indicators if things are starting to unravel a little bit in a location, because that is our biggest challenge. So we're working on a few new things around that at the moment, because the earlier you can act on something, the better it's easier to fix. So because there's no perfect sailing in any business.
No, that's definitely a common theme across everyone I speak to. I've got 150 companies in the SA Leaders Network, and in the words of Andrew Downs, business is simple but not easy. So, but I like the fact that cultural piece, you talk about the behaviours and measure, so that you can be proactive
Yep.
about finding where the gaps may be.
And I think the other part of culture that I didn't touch on is that it needs to be really consistent with you, like the owner of the business. So you can't have a culture that's not true to you. So the culture has to reflect the founders or the leaders of the business really honestly, because otherwise it's never going to work.
Good tip. Authenticity.
Yeah. And I think that's certainly we see that with all of our younger team members that come through, like the authenticity and honesty is so important to them. So, yeah, it's really interesting managing that across different demographics and age groups and all of those other things. So, yeah.
I read in an interview you gave online that you had 5 strategies for success. 1 was positive attitude, and that comes shining through with you. 2, I love this one, the 90% rule.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favourites.
So I just think that I'll get you to talk about that in a second. 3, being kind, and also I use the word generosity
that's
I
a good
think
one.
is really important. 4 is focus on the future, which has been evident you've done that. And 5 is live by your values. We just talked about that. Just quickly explain the 90% rule to those listening.
Okay, that's a really funny one because I may be a Virgo and be good at planning, but I also like to move fairly quickly. And so I'm not a perfectionist, and I married a perfectionist. So we've had some really good debates in our household around my standards because I will move really quickly, and I'm really happy with 90% because when I look at completing something at 90%, the last 10% can take as long to do as the first 90. And anyone, it doesn't matter what you do, if you want to be really pedantic and get to perfection, that last 10% will take you a long time to get there. And meanwhile, someone else has completed the 90% and moved on, and they've done 3 other tasks in the time that you've actually just finished 1. So I really believe firmly in the 90% rule. And in fact, I remember I asked my husband permission if I could talk about the fact that he teases me about being Miss 90. And I said, I'm just doing this talk. Can I mention that? And he said, well, actually, really, I think that's pretty generous. You might want to go with 50. So we have some quite fun debates about my lack of perfection compared to his. And it definitely shows in our house renovations. It's much better that he manages all of those things because it's much higher standard when he's doing it. But I really do believe in that, just getting things done and moving. And I think in today's business environment, we don't have time to do 100%. And if we do, we're going to be left behind. So
I don't know if anyone ever does 100%, but I think it's a great rule. And going back on your,
I think it's actually being happy with it. Don't you think it's that thing of accepting, just getting it done is really important?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it what the old saying, bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush.
I like that.
So, but I think also when you're talking about your book, you talked about the book, I think sometimes for women maybe it's that we do seek perfectionism.
Yeah.
That maybe that's part of our nature. But going back to your strategies for success, I just want to touch before we wind up here, and I just think there's so much great learning here. Strategy. Your point 4 was focus on the future. How do you do that in the business? I think a lot of business owners put a lot of complexity around strategy, or they think it needs to be complex. But I'd like this podcast to showcase that it can be quite simple.
Yes.
And that there's a formula almost that builds successful strategy. Can you just share your strategic planning process and how you go about that?
So we aim to have a plan on a page, so just a 1-page summary of what our objectives are. Once upon a time, we used to look a lot further out than we do now. So I really only look at 1 year in advance at the moment in detail. Definitely we've got a North Star of where we're heading long term, but I'm really only interested in our strategic planning with the team is, okay, this is where we're heading. Let's focus on the next 12 months. And we've seen that in the last 2 years with COVID. No one can anticipate what's ahead. So I think what I'm seeing in strategy is a much more focus on the shorter, what's happening, how we're responding to the market, how we're listening to our customers. And the other thing that was interesting, I went through a interesting program recently on strategic planning that actually Anthony Kittle organised. And it was really great. We had some businesses in South Australia who actually shared their strategic planning. It's a really great thing to share with others because getting to that 1-page template, because I remember as soon as I saw this opportunity to be part of this workshop, I jumped in on it because finding the right template and layout is really important. And the particular case study we were looking at was really looking at how important organic growth is. We all talk about doing all these new things and new bells and whistles and new markets and all of these sorts of things. But in actual fact, the most growth any business can get in the next 12 months is most likely from organic. So it's making sure when you are putting that plan together that you put enough time to make sure that that organic growth is being supported, as well as new markets and those big picture type things. But we've certainly put our strategic plan currently more on a grassroots level organic focus, and that's probably where we're seeing the best results.
Thank you. And I love that, yes, learning and sharing from one another.
Super important.
That's what SA Leaders is all about. So that's a great way to the final words of this podcast. So I'm so grateful with what you shared with the listeners today. It's been a great insight. It's a fascinating business from my eyes, and I just commend you on all the success that you've achieved.
Oh, thanks, Natasha. It's been great to chat today. Thanks for having me.
At SA Leaders, we're all about collaboration and community. If you're curious to know more about how we help businesses and leaders just like you scale and grow beyond their glass ceilings, then visit our website at www.saleaders.com.au. And please don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your network, and write a review if you really enjoyed it. This has been an Audiosity production. I'm Natasha Milani, and I look forward to chatting with you next time. Happy connecting.